here we have my second sketchbook, which went from 2020 to 2023. I was well and truly out of high school at this point, and I think I was studying a Cert 4 in Screen and Media, Animation and Game Design. Although I didn't have a lot of time for this sketchbook, I did complete it quicker than my previous one. So we've got a lot of stickers, inspiration from artists that I love, essentially, and genres I love. So let's get into it. So as we can see, we've got the spread out that was the thumbnail in my previous sketchbook. And then I signed off on when I'd finished basically the sketchbook, and then with some extra lead additions and maybe art liner too. So I'd go through and I'd look back on previous illustrations and then I'd add to them with maybe art liner or lead pencil. So managing to kind of move away from a lot of blank space. Obviously this was the exception. This first page I liked to leave blank at the time. And then another gem illustration, and then fairies again. So I had a lot more fairies in this one. This was an idea that had come to me in a dream. This was like the layout, and this was back here, this was like a library. This tower had like a massive ocean tank in the middle of it, and this pyramid, like a lot of the rooms moved around and stuff, and then it had all this lovely nature surrounding it and a massive tree in the back. It was quite an interesting dream actually. I think this was when I was trying to see if Sharpie illustrations would make me more confident with my line work, which yes and no, not really. I liked it, but I didn't like how chunky and lack of detail that I could get into. Like I couldn't really add proper detail because it would all overlap in like a mess essentially. And so I just kind of stuck with pencil and line art illustrations again. So here we've got some more colour pencil illustrations. I think this was for these two were for Draw This in Your Styles. And this was the idea for the tarot deck I was illustrating. So I was crossing them off as I went, which I'm pretty sure I got through a majority of these. So these were some of the tarot illustrations ideas that I came up with, and then I'd transfer these to a different piece of paper, essentially. So I was quite happy with how I'd posed the moon and death in particular. The chariot looked a little bit awkward in the final illustration, I will admit. Can't see or make out what that's meant to be. I'm going to say it was a king of something because it's got a beard here. This was, so it's meant to be read right to left. I'm always tired, it's exhausting, pointless, consuming. I think I was going through quite a bit of depression at the time, and that's just kind of event art of how I felt. Starting to get into more colour pencil illustrations and some watercolour. I was very, very proud of these hands to the point that I kept working on them. And I feel like almost overworked the paper because it started to get a little bit beady. The paper started to bead with the watercolour. So I did end up leaving it alone eventually once I'd coloured and shaded it all. So this is all white overlay watercolour here with the red. I'm trying to do some pose practice again. And another hand. This was a concept for a temporary podcast I was doing at the time where we were ghosts. Our logo was ghosts, essentially, and I just like the idea of just sit on the couch. We've got no object permanence. I just thought that was very funny at the time. Some mermaids for Mermaid. I don't believe I illustrated all of these, but I do believe I had a lot of fun sketching them out. Some more mermaids and some pose practice. Starting to really emphasise on trying to find flow with fabrics and movement. Some more watercolour practice. I think I was still using the pencil method where I wet the tip of the pencil and then use that ink to colour still. Some more watercolour illustrations. A thumbnail for a playthrough video I was doing. This was a sketch concept for a Draw This in Your Style. Trying to practice hands and also move away from that same face syndrome by practicing different ethnicities. I was quite happy with actually this one because I liked the bold movement of the ink and how it just really captured the emotion that I wanted to try and get in that illustration, even though I didn't finish this at the time. Alright, this is where we start getting juicy. So I'd started practicing more with my inks and more with my hatching and shading. As you can see, I've got some shadow work there and some pose work here, some more pose work and practicing different faces. I was quite proud of this illustration in particular because I liked how I did the hatching and the expression. I was quite proud of it and how light and shadow was playing with each other. More ideas with extra eyeballs that I really liked and more movement as well. I was quite happy actually experimenting with a lot of ink pen illustrations at the time. And some more watercolour. I think this was for a draw this in your style at the time. And then these two were just pose practice. More watercolour and pose practice. I don't think I liked this one because the arm was very awkward and the hand was massive. So I wasn't a big fan of that one. I did like this one, however, because I liked how I've managed to capture the hat and the fabric movement perfectly. Okay, so we've got some perspective work here. Once again, I knew I wasn't the best at drawing buildings and scenery, so really trying to practice on that. Another eyeball, because what's a sketchbook without an eyeball? Some more pencil illustrations. That looks like a fighting fish. And that looks like a sea dragon. Some more illustrations. This was referencing a photo. I wanted to practice like inanimate objects, and I feel like I coloured it pretty well with my watercolours at the time. And this was also referencing something. The photographer, I think she'd photographed herself in like a bathtub with all these flowers, and I really liked the pose and the colours, so I tried to understand it in a sense. More watercolour and ink work. I was quite happy with this one and how bold and dark some of the shadows were and how detailed that actually came out with the inks. And some more pose work along here. I think this one I was trying to see how confident I could do with ink lines, which I was quite kind of happy with the movement and the shapes, just not so much how undetailed it was. Animation kind of concept. I think this was more vent art for myself. Alright, some more fan illustrations. So we've got some lapis lazuli, we've got some princess bubblegum, and then I think these were more just for myself. These were referencing some images, these ones not as much. And once again getting into that hatching again. I started getting quite good at it actually, as you can see. This one was a watercolour and gel pen with the white here. And obviously some more pose practice. You can see here. This was meant to be me for Meet the Artist at the time, which I might do another one this year. Stay tuned. Some more pose practice with inks and pencil, and some more colour practice as well. Still trying to understand that hatching and light and shadow, and also trying to move away from that same face syndrome again by practicing different ethnicities. Some more practice. We've got, I really liked how I did this dragon actually, because for some reason I just liked the shape and the silhouette of it. It was a very clear silhouette. I think with this sketchbook in particular, I started exploring colour and how colour works, and how you can emphasise certain colours to help bring out and lighten other colours in the piece. So I was starting to get, you can see here I've gotten into a bit of the complementary colours with the yellow and the blue, and understanding how they all blend together. And also with my movements, we've got some pencil and ink pen illustrations here. I think this one I was quite happy with because I'd done a very basic pencil sketch and then I'd rawly done the ink work essentially, and I was quite happy with the movement. Even though the foot was a little bit funny and the hands are a little bit funny, I was happy with the dress movement at the time. Some more perspective and ink work here. Some more face shadow and shading and pose work I was quite happy with. This page in particular I was quite proud of at the time. I liked all the colour variation on the page. I liked the hatching that I'd done with the pen here and how I'd done the shading with the watercolours. I really liked how I did the pose and how natural it looked with the lighting. In particular, I'd done very well with the lighting of different points on the human body here. And then the fabric movement as well, emulating that fabric collapsed at the back of her there. Another mouth, practicing mouth poses, because I think I was quite closed mouthed. Like I drew a lot of closed mouths at the time. You can see here, closed mouth, closed mouth, closed mouth. So I was starting to try and work on teeth in a sense. I was really happy with this pose as well. Really liked how soft it looked, and I really liked the shading and the highlights that I did leave, and just the layers that I built up on it as well. This one as well, I really liked the intense shadows that kind of highlight the metal plating of the armor that I'd done with this angel here. And I really liked the pen illustration, and even though I did a little bit of ink work in there, I didn't want to do so much that it overwhelmed it. I just wanted to pick out the little bits of detail that were available there. And once again, illustrating with biro pen, which made my illustrations a lot more confident. This is some more pose and shading practice. Trying to draw animals as well, so deer, I think at the time, because I thought they were very interesting with their anatomy. This is a self sketch again. I'd cut my hair at the time, and I think I digitized that illustration in particular. More shadow and color practice. I was very proud of this hand as well. I was quite happy with how I'd done the hatching and the shading, and how the light worked very well, and how the shadow worked very well. And I was happy with how in proportion most of the fingers were. And overall I was just really happy. Like, I wanted to eat that hand. I just wanted it to be every hand ever. I wanted every hand to be as perfect as this one at the time. And then I tried to replicate it here, and I couldn't, because something about the fingers was just too long. So, and we've got some other concept fabric sketches here, some fabric here. Still trying to illustrate with pen to start off with, to make my strokes a lot more confident and comfortable, which definitely helped. Some more ink work, and some hatching practice and shading practice again. I was quite happy with this one as well, with the shading and the shadows and how the light came down. And I was very, very happy with doing this illustration because I wanted to practice color transition. So I practiced yellow to pink to blue, which I was quite happy with. And I was quite happy with how I captured her skin tone without actually doing her skin tone. So I was quite impressed with myself with that one. And I was quite happy with how I captured her profile at the time. Alright, some more ink illustrations. This is a fan illustration of Technoblade at the time. Rest in peace, Techno never dies. We've got Sarah from the Labyrinth. This was a movie that released ages ago, and it had David Bowie as the Goblin King at the time. And I was quite obsessed with that movie. I really liked just the old style fantasy kind of idea that it was going for. More hatching and realism kind of practice. Some more ink practice. And I think these were meant to be for another story, which I never got around to. I think this was for a draw this in your style that I never finished. Some more face practice. I think this was of my ex at the time. And this is of one of my friends, but as a woman instead. More pen practice. As you can see, I started getting a lot more confident with my pen strokes and where it would all be posed and go. I started getting a lot better at sort of my foreshortening, although this could have used a little bit more work. I was quite proud of it at the time. More pen illustrations and how confident I got with it. More pen illustration with some watercolor work and hatching. And then I think shading as well. I wanted to practice metal and I wanted to practice shadows and skin. So I was quite happy with this illustration and doing the highlights around her belly button and getting the shadows and proportions correct. I was quite proud of this one in particular. I wasn't too happy with this one, mainly because I felt the chest was off and I felt the hand was too big. She's got like massive sausage fingers there, so I wasn't too pleased with that one. Some more pen practice illustration, and I think I was trying to see how fast I could illustrate as well. So I think this one I'd done in about 5 minutes with my pen strokes essentially, and then I'd coloured it later on. hand practice again, because you can never practice enough hands. And this was a character concept for a different story that I'd come up with and never finished, because I just love making up characters and then never finishing the story. And then this was some architecture design for Minecraft buildings at the time. And so I kind of cut and put these in at the time. I was quite happy with, because I wanted to do like this towering concept, and half of it was underground, half of it was above, and then like had an opening here. I quite enjoyed Minecraft actually, and I still do quite a lot. Some more hand practice and seeing how fast I can draw hands. So a lot of these were referenced poses, and I timed them. So I put 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 4.5, 1.5, 7.5 minutes. These ones I hadn't quite timed, but I'd just done them just for fun. This one, the pen illustration, was done in 4.5 minutes, which I was quite happy with. And then I'd done the watercolour afterwards. This is another illustration of myself. So I was wearing elf ears at the time, and I dressed up to look like an elf pirate. And I think I was going to some convention or another. I was going to some convention or party or something, and it was a costume party, and I'd actually sewn that trench coat that I was wearing at the time. It wasn't very well sewn, but it was a really good effort for a first attempt making anything on my own. Some more Minecraft idea illustrations, and then some more extra limb ideas and concepts. I was quite enamoured with the idea of like a fantasy goddess or god, just with lots of extra limbs and eyeballs, looking quite alien in a sense. Some more watercolour and pen work. And then obviously I think this was another Minecraft build idea up here. And I think I was doing some 3D work at the time, and I decided, oh, what if I did this in Blender, and what if I did this in Blender? And I thought I'd be able to do the perspectives a lot better. I never got around to these, but I did enjoy the practice that it gave me with the hatching and the colour idea, essentially. Alright, some more colour practice and colour transitions. So we've got some yellow to purpley blue here, and I'll start to incorporate more nature into things. You can see some leaves and like a snake here, and I was quite happy with the colours that I'd chosen at the time and how they all balanced each other. Some more pencil and colour illustrations, essentially, trying to really emphasise that flow, like a leaf foliage kind of idea, essentially, with these illustrations. I was quite happy with these. This was practice doing veils, so I wanted to practice doing transparency in fabric with that illustration, which I was quite happy with, and I was quite happy with how I did the shadow here as well. And then another little colour concept, I think this is like a skeleton, yeah, it's like a skeleton, you can see the teeth there and the jaw, and then it had like horns coming out and flowers coming out. It was kind of like a semi-horror nature concept I was going for. And then some more pose and shading and lead pencil practice. This is an illustration of a friend of mine at the time. She's still friends with me actually, and she's doing really well. And I really wanted to add nature into her portrait as well, and I feel like I did that really well and added a lot of flow and movement into it. This was kind of like a naturey portrait, similar to these two, just of myself instead. I wasn't too pleased with this one because I didn't really like how it turned out. I did like the practice that I gained from it with the colour and mixing colours, like your purples and yellows and your blues and greens, and layering. Some more shading and fabric practice. I was quite happy with this one in particular, with how I did the cross shading and the hatch shading. And the movement that I'd captured with it. Some more lead illustrations. I think I've definitely digitized this one actually. And I got very detailed with all like the nature bits that were all amongst in here. You probably can't see, but it's very intense lead work essentially. And I've done a lot of work and shading on that one in particular. And then another, this was like a harpy with like fabrics and working on wings again and the shading of those. And then we got some dogs as dragons over here. More shading and concept practice. So this was like an arrow through the eye kind of idea with like magic kind of coming out. And then this one was fabric practice again, and pose practice. I really liked how I did the shading, in particular with the softies of the skin. I was quite pleased with, and the blending that I'd done, although I wasn't too pleased with the hand at the time. And I would have been 21 in this illustration. Another Meet the Artist. Oh look, 21, that's me. So this is a Meet the Artist. I was quite happy with the hand, although the arm itself was posed a little bit awkwardly, and so were the legs. I was quite happy with how I'd managed to draw the hand though, and do the fingers and emulate the bones in the hand essentially with the knuckles. And then beautiful blank space. Even though I'd managed to kind of cut that habit out, it still creeps in every now and then. You've got some blank space in the corner or a blank space in that corner, but I was starting to manage getting rid of that blank space in this sketchbook. So here we've got, I was starting to practice more nature, so I started doing bees and frogs. So I really liked doing the hatching and the shading work of these and the colour work, and incorporating washi tape into my sketchbook as well, just to add a pop of colour essentially. Some more lead practice and movement practice, trying to do like a veiled robe here. And this was some colour ideas and got some movement ideas here. So this was meant to be a lady underwater that I'd referenced. And then some of these aren't referenced, some of these are just random ideas I've come up with. So this one I think I'd come up with, and same with this one, where I'd gone for like this floral mask effect on her face. I really liked how I did the shading and the shadows on that in particular. And then this was meant to be like a desert rain god essentially, and I'd gotten like this rain cloud coming down over the desert that it walks upon. I didn't really explore that too far essentially, but I did like the colour work again with the blues and yellows. Oh, this is an idea for a house I want to have. So I'd have like a massive studio, and I would have built this all by myself. And this wraparound porch essentially, a theatre in a sense, and then your main kitchen and home. It would have just been built for me essentially. This illustration was for a drag queen contest that my friends and I were going to do. So I wanted to be this kind of drag queen. I wanted to be very gothic vampire kind of look, with this gorgeous mullet coming down with black at the head and then white at the tips, just to emphasize the collar here essentially. And I was going to get like blue skin dye essentially, or just blue body paint, and kind of emphasize the paleness of the vampire. I got some more pose practice and watercolor practice. At this time I'd gotten a new watercolor palette, which you can see I've swatched along here, and I was starting to get more into just the watercolors and exploring how they work, exploring how they layer and what colors you can make from layering them, which I was quite happy with. So I was quite pleased with this pose in particular, and I was quite happy with the hands that I'd drawn. I felt like they were posed very well. This is an illustration of one of my friends, and obviously she shaved her head at the time, and I really liked just doing the colour shading again, so the purple and the yellow, or the purple and the green, and then I did like a lot of floral borders around her. And then here we have a wizard from Stone in the Sword. No, Sword in the Stone. We have a wizard from Sword in the Stone here, and I really liked his pointy ears, although I don't think he had pointy ears. I drew him with pointy ears, and I really liked his stoush and just overall character in general. He seemed like a very sassy wizard, and I love sassy characters. This was meant to be a person with like wisteria growing from their dress essentially, that I really liked the idea of. So I got like all this wisteria just cascading down essentially, and all these leaves throughout her outfit, which I really enjoyed. Some more shading and ink work, pattern practice, and then watercolor memes. So at the time, this like geeked tree was all the rage at the time, so I thought it would be funny if I just illustrated him to practice wood textures and just to practice in general. I think I was stuck in a bit of art block at the time with this one. And here we have some more pencil illustrations, and I think this is getting into fairies again. So we've got wings here, and I think I was doing fairies based off of flowers. So we've got tulip and hibiscus. And then this was a different flower again. I can't remember what kind though. And then also getting those poses down pat again and really improving on the hands as well. And the first horse out of many horse illustrations that I started drawing. Some more pose practice and hand practice, which I started to get good with. And then this was practice shading glass and colouring glass in particular, which I was quite happy with at the time. Although I feel like I could have done better doing the shape of the vase that I was referencing at the time. I was still quite proud of how I'd managed to capture the highlights and shadows on the glass. Another face melting kind of concept, some butterflies, another eyeball and oddities. Once again with the ink and the flow, I was quite happy with. Some more lead pencil pose practice and colour and watercolour practice. This I'd done for a Draw This in Your Style illustration at the time, which I was quite happy with. I think I digitised it and then posted it. Oh, and I'd watched The Last Unicorn. It was the first time I'd watched The Last Unicorn. I got quite obsessed with it because I really liked how it was animated. So this was analysing whimsical fantasy, and I'd stamped the ink letters for this at the time because for some reason I just didn't think my writing was good enough. And I was watching all of these kind of fantasy movies that I really liked the art style and illustration styles of. So in particular Disney's Mulan, I really liked the illustrative smoke style that they had in it. I watched Sinbad, and so this is Eris on her throne, the Mistress of Chaos, I believe she was called. I really liked Eris at the time because she was just amazing. She was just how her hair was animated, the flow, the shadows, and like the wisps of smoke as she'd move around. She was just very cool to me at the time. I feel like there was a lot of love put into her animation in particular. So a lot of different fantasy inspirations, and analysing how they did their line works, analysing the thick and thins essentially, and where they'd emphasise the thick and thin lines. I was studying artists that portray fantasy, so I think I was starting to get into more traditional artists and such at the time. Alphonse Mucha was a big inspiration for me that I'm still studying as well. I really liked his border work in particular, like the floral borders with your Art Nouveau kind of style. I liked the line work as well. I think I was trying to practice the line work here with inks and watercolour on an iris. And then obviously some brainstorm ideas, some concept sketches of more movement and some flowers, starting to really incorporate nature into my illustrations as well. This was ideas for a signature, and I think I was experimenting with carving my own stamps as well, which I was having a lot of fun with at the time. You can see I've got a monstera, some more monsteras, and then I had like these mushrooms I'd carved out, which I was quite proud of in a sense. I'm playing with negative space a lot as well. Some more pencil and pen illustrations, practicing that pose practice again and the movement. Not really focusing on the details, more focusing on the actual silhouette in a sense. And then here I started coming up with some more ideas for the next sketchbook, as I usually do towards the end of my sketchbooks. So this was inspired by a flower I'd seen, Coreopsis ruby frost, which was an interesting flower I'd seen. So I'd drawn a person inspired by that flower. I thought she should wear a gorgeous dress with it. And then some more fantasy creatures, so like the dryad, and I think this was a kelpie illustration. And then this was another illustration of me. I'd recently cut my hair at the time, which I was quite happy with, especially because it took a lot of heat off of my head and face and neck. And then a mermaid, some more fantasy ideas like a vampire and whatever this horn freak was. And then that was it. That was my second sketchbook. And that was my sketchbooks in total. I feel like it's really good to see the difference between both of these, because looking back you can see I really wanted to improve a number of concepts and ideas, really wanted to improve a lot of illustrative styles, and you can see the improvement difference for the negative space in particular. I'd managed to eliminate a lot more of that blank space in this sketchbook in particular, managed to use a lot more of the pages to their proper potential in a sense, and starting to explore ideas and not be as afraid of them in a sense, and being afraid of failing the idea as well, just giving it a go essentially. Yeah, so we've got a lot of negative space there. I feel like I've definitely improved over these years, and I'm so glad I've kept these sketchbooks, although I didn't keep a lot of my childhood drawings at the time. I think I was going through a clean out, and back then I just had a lot of loose paper illustrations that I just wanted to get rid of. Although I wish I hadn't now, because then I could have looked back to my childhood a bit better and understood where I'd started. So, which is a little bit sad, but oh well, I'm sure I've got photos of it all somewhere. So that was my sketchbook tour. I hope you guys really enjoyed it as much as I did. I enjoyed reflecting on how I've improved and how I've changed my style over the years. I was quite impressed with how much I've changed from, you know, trying to do this kind of cartoony anime kind of style to just doing my own thing at my own level. Still cartoony, obviously, in some aspects, but then elements of realism, elements of nature as well, and just staying a little less regimented than what I was at the time. So I'm happy with how I've improved, and I can't wait to show you guys my next sketchbook, which will be in the future, because she's not quite finished yet. So I hope you guys have a lovely day, night or afternoon, wherever you may be, and yeah, see you next time. Bye.